show about that. Let's dive into the Matt LaFleur stuff. Here's the poll question that Bill Huber put up. And you guys, you're probably already following Bill Huber. If you're not, go give him a follow. He's one of my favorite follows. Love the articles he writes. He does a hell of a job. He said, congratulations, you were hired as Packers president. What's your plan? He gives you 4 options. Fire Matt LaFleur, fire Brian Gutekunst, fire both, or keep them both and pray for health, all right? And the poll results were, I'm talking about, it wasn't even close. 72% of the fan base, and he's up to 5,200 votes now, right? 5,259 votes, as a matter of fact. 72.1% of the fan base that voted on this said keep both and pray for health. And if you comb through social media for the last 7 days, well, shorter than that, I guess you could say, the last few days, you would think it was the opposite, right? 72%. Isn't it amazing how the number keeps getting closer and closer, or further and further in favor of Matt LaFleur, the further we get away from that tough loss to the Bears? It's like the emotions are wearing off and people are realizing, yeah, he probably is a pretty damn good coach, right? And that's probably our best bet right now, to try to run this thing back and get everybody healthy, right? Would probably be the best scenario here. Coach Lynn in the chat says, bring back Matt LaFleur. Let's get over the hump the right way and win this thing. I agree. Again, man, if there was another option out there that was like, oh, no, man, this dude is way better than Matt LaFleur, that's the guy for the job, I'd be all for it. Like, all right, cool. But like Ryan has said on the Packernet podcast over and over and over, shout out to him. You guys make sure you subscribe to Packernet podcast anywhere you get your podcast. That's where you can hear this podcast, but more importantly, hear his podcast, daily Packernet podcast. And then also he's got Packernet After Dark, where you can call in, leave a voicemail, be a part of the show there. So make sure you guys check that out. But it's like, who do you want to bring in? You know, who's your choice? If it's John Harbaugh, okay, cool, we can respect that, but that's not my choice. Go look at the track record. Not that good, you know? And again, it's funny too, because I think Baltimore fans would much rather have Matt LaFleur as their coach as they would John Harbaugh, and they just fired John Harbaugh, obviously. So, and interviews are taking place all over the place. Brian Flores got an interview, I think, with Baltimore, if I remember correctly. So all that's starting to shake loose, and you're at least starting to see all the interest in which potential coaches, right? So hopefully in the next day or two, we'll start to get some answers as to where everybody is going to end up, right? Let's see here. Packer Doug says, today, Tauscher mentioned that James Campen, former player, would likely come back to coach O-line. Boy, Coach Campy, man, anybody who ever played for Coach Campy, anybody who coached with Campy, anybody who knows him they love this dude. I'd be all for it. We had some solid offensive lines when he was here, right? And he had a hell of a run. The fact that Tauscher mentioned that he, would likely come back to coach O-line kind of makes you wonder, did they have a conversation? I don't know if he said they had a conversation or not, Doug. Now, he would probably know him just as good as anyone, right? He played for him. There's something's got to give on the offensive line. It just does. Either our GM is absolutely horrible with the moves he made this year in terms of shoring up the offensive line. Because, guys, remember, this isn't something new. We talked about this. Immediately following the Eagles' loss last year in the playoffs. It was like, we got to get better up front. We got bullied up front. We got to get better up front. And then we go through draft season. You spend a second-round pick on Anthony Belton. You go out and you spend a good chunk of money on Aaron Banks, and you think, all right, we were spot on. That's what they did, right? Now, I wanted a 3-tech, too. I wanted another 3-tech. We weren't able to get that, obviously. They went out and got a cornerback. As much as people like to pretend like they ignored the cornerback position, they didn't ignore it. It just, as of the moment, seems like they swung and missed on Nate Hobbs, right? And I understand that happens from time to time, right? It does. But one thing I do want to point out that's a common thread between Bill Huber's poll question and my poll question I put up. I actually put up a poll question that said you can only keep one. Would you keep LaFleur or Goody? It was like 52% said Goody. So, and here you see the poll question kind of matches that, right? Goody has the least amount here at 3.9% in terms of firing him. And Matt LaFleur was at 15.8%. So that definitely holds true across, obviously, both poll questions. So really, really interesting there for sure. Chris N says, just replace Goot and roll. I mean, you could do that, right? You could go that route. And I know like people like to compare the way he's built his roster to, you know, how the Eagles GM, is it Howie Roseman, I believe, has built that roster. And then obviously there was a lot of comps a few years ago when the Rams won the Super Bowl. They went out and made a flurry of moves, said F them draft picks, right? They went out and got really, really aggressive with the roster. They won a Super Bowl, got over the hump. So there's still some people that bring that up, like, we're pretending like Brian Gutekunst is a great GM. Well, how come these other GMs have kind of lapped him now, right? With the Eagles, I mean, I believe that's the second championship Howie Roseman's won. If I remember correctly, he was there the first time. They let him go, then they bring him back and he wins another one, right? So if there's a choice out there like that, Chris, where you're like, okay, yeah, he's hands down way better than Brian Gutekunst, I'd be about that too, just like I'd be about an improvement over Matt LaFleur. I just don't know who that is, right? I don't know who that general manager is that you go, or that young executive. Now, I will say this is going to ruffle some feathers, but if you see it, you got to if you see it, you got to say it, right? You guys remember when we made the choice with Goody, we had a young Elliott Wolf in the house, right? Ron Wolf's son. And we kind of decided Goody over him, and then Elliott Wolf left. And now, obviously, Elliott Wolf ends up in New England. Elliott Wolf turned that around real quick in New England, didn't he? So that one kind of stings. Like, maybe that would have been the better choice. I don't know. It's still early. Maybe they'll get boat raced this week in the playoffs and never sniff the playoffs again. I highly doubt that, based off how they've been playing, right? But everybody gives Mike Vrabel all the credit, and I think he deserves a ton of credit up there. But you also got to give Elliott Wolf and his staff a lot of credit there as well. Sorry, Jen. Jen says pain, Clayton. I know. That's why you heard the hesitation in my voice. I didn't want to say it out loud, but it kind of is what it is, right? It's and listen, you're going to miss on stuff, right? You're going to miss on a GM hire or a head coach hire. You're damn sure going to miss on draft picks. Every team misses on draft picks. So it is what it is. It's part of the game, but I think the biggest thing, there's a conversation taking place right now about Aaron Banks, and we're probably going to get into that stuff tomorrow, okay? Where it's like, okay, we got to weigh out our options. Do you want to keep them or cut them? Here's how much they're against the cap. Here's how much you can free up. Obviously, restructure is always on the table with a player that's got room between a base salary and the actual guaranteed money in which you can convert salary to signing bonus, cut down on the cap, cash over cap. If you want to play the voidable year game, you can do that as well. But the Aaron Banks conversation was, I think it was our buddy Wendell Ferreira over on X that had put it out there. I think it was. I could be wrong. But somebody posed the question of, do you cut loose Aaron Banks or do you bring him back, right? Well, the numbers that Spot Track has, and they may be a little bit different with over the cap, and you guys may have a little bit different numbers, but overall, essentially what you've got with Aaron Banks is a $24 million cap hit. If you cut him, you're going to free up roughly $4 million. So you got to ask yourself, is it worth not having Aaron Banks on the roster just to free up $4 million? Somebody said keep him and put him on the bench as a backup. And it's like, whoa, that's a lot of money to have on the bench, right? If he does indeed eat up $24 million against the cap, I don't like that idea, right? I'd rather try to trade him for a 7th round pick or something, Now, I don't know who would take on the remainder of that contract and exactly how that would work. But that's just another interesting conversation that's kind of out there right now, right? So let's see here what Jen Wright says. One more year, he was playing hurt like Hobbs. See, Jen, I can get that too, because when you get into the 3rd year, I'm pretty sure the number gets even more tolerable, and we'll break that down in a little more detail tomorrow. But yeah, if you kind of get through this year, then next year you could save even more money cutting him loose. What I think the worst of the entire situation and scenario would be you cut him loose after this year, he goes somewhere else. It was that he was hurt and he plays great, and it's like, well, hell, we had the answer. We just expected him to be the answer while he was trying to play banged up all year long and trying to get healthy throughout camp, right? But it was pretty rough, though. Jason Y asked, what was Aaron Banks' PFF grade last year? I can't remember, Jason. I don't know. Sometimes I hit these, sometimes I don't. For some reason, I'm thinking it was in the mid-60s, but I could be wrong. Okay, because I do remember when we signed him and we looked through everything, it was like, oh, man, that don't make a lot of sense. But I trust Goody, and I said this earlier today, because Goody found Zach Tom in the 4th round. Goody found Rasheed Walker in the 7th round, right? Goody's got a pretty good track record of putting an offensive line together in terms of that. Now we're getting to the point where it's like, does he really? Does he? But does he? So it's kind of the exception in the rule type conversation, right? So, yeah. So there you go. Again, just want to kind of reset Matt LaFleur, that information, the updates there. We covered it pretty extensively. Essentially, just paraphrasing before we wrap this up here, this segment, Adam Schefter earlier this morning on ESPN radio with Jen Latta, he actually said that people he talked to around the league says that Matt LaFleur is a top 5 coach, and he feels like the longer this goes on, the more you're like, okay, this is up in the air. I think it's what he said. The longer it lingers, the more you wonder how I would interpret it right now is it's up in the air. Okay. He also went on to say, most places would have a high level of interest for Matt LaFleur. I don't know if maybe they would hold up. They would hold up and say, Team X, you want him, give us a 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick, right? And then he went on to say, why would you give up a pick when you could hire a John Harbaugh or somebody, keep your pick, and get him at a discounted rate for the offset clauses that's within the rules of hiring and firing coaches. That type of stuff comes into play, obviously, as well. And then he went on to say, if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm saying if you don't want to pay me, then let me go, right? The reality is if Matt LaFleur hits the open market, dude's probably going to get somewhere between 15 and 20 million per year. That's what the market is suggesting. So keep that in mind, right? Yeah. I agree, Coach. He said there's some truth to his remarks. I agree. And there's some people going, oh, this is a BS report. This is it. Again, I laid the foundation before we dove into it. Adam Schefter, to me, it's very, 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 very obvious. He's getting information from Matt LaFleur's camp and that agency, and they're playing the PR game, right, to kind of give themselves leverage. And I'm sure he's got sources within the building as well. He didn't make it up out of thin air, I don't believe, I guess is what I'm saying there. So, again, we talked about the offset. And then people started mentioning Kevin Stefanski, and I did the poll question. The poll question was, which would you rather have, Kevin Stefanski or Matt LaFleur? It was 91% of the fans said Matt LaFleur over Kevin Stefanski. So at the time, maybe that's changed a little bit, but obviously it can't change too much. So there you go. That's just kind of a quick rundown. Again, we wanted to reset, kind of give you guys a rundown on the Matt LaFleur situation. Now let's shift gears. First of all, if you guys are watching this video back later, let us know in the comments, how do you feel about the Matt LaFleur situation? Hopefully we've kept you up to date. And then tomorrow or the next day, we'll have news that breaks on it. We'll probably give you the latest tomorrow. There may be some more stuff kind of trickle out and kind of point us in which direction this thing may or may not be going, right? That's possible tomorrow as well. But let us know in the comments what you think. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you know when we go live in the future. I'm with you, Steph. Steph said Kevin Stefanski. What a joke. I'm with you on that one. I was surprised at how many people commented too, though. I mean, I know it was just showing 10% wanted Kevin Stefanski over LaFleur, but there were a couple people in there that were adamant about it. I was just like, holy cow, I'm just going to – I hate arguing with people, so there comes a point where I'm just like, I'm just not going to respond. I'm going to stop responding. We're not going to change each other's mind, right? So